What are some deeply unsettling facts that you know? The number of people older than you never increases. In the 1800s, a lot of dentures were made using the teeth of dead soldiers. People with dementia just forget how to eat one day. They forget how to swallow. We don't know if they feel starvation or pain because they are too far gone. My brother works in a dementia care facility, and they know that a patient is gonna die soon when they eventually refuse food. And we don't euthanize them. They just starve to death, and they never tell the families that. Okay, I put this in another comment on Eta, but it fits better here. In Mexico, there was a case of a woman with a thyroid problem. She worked on a department store. She started to have serious abdominal pains and told her employers about it. They ignored her. She went to the bathroom and then called emergency services, who arrived but were blocked by the superiors from entering. She was pregnant and didn't knew it because of the thyroid. She was having a miscarriage on the bathroom. After she came out, she was fired. But that's not the end of it. The store ratted her out for having a miscarriage. See, where she lives, abortions are illegal, and her situation was apparently catalogued as an abortion. She was thrown to prison, 16 years, for involuntary manslaughter. That was 2016. And even after many protest and media coverage, the state refuses to drop the charges, and the department store hasn't taken any responsibility about their acts. Cows don't convert grass directly into protein. They have enormous colonies of bacteria in their stomachs that have population explosions when they eat grass, live, breed, die, and then the cows digest them into protein. The USA has lost 6 nuclear weapons that were never found. The symptoms for a heart attack can be a lot milder than what is shown in movies or TV shows. I have seen people coming in with some discomfort and then passing due to a massive infarction when we did the angiogram. Most serial killers won't ever even be noticed, never mind captured. Years ago, I remember watching an episode of the show Monsters Inside Me where this 16-year-old kid was doing something outside and a fly flew into his eye. It only made contact for about a microsecond, but it was enough time for it to lay eggs. After they hatched, they started eating his eye from the inside and he was starting to go blind until a doctor finally figured out what was wrong. Just imagine that, getting your eye eaten from the inside and losing your sight all because a fly very briefly made contact with you. Ever since I learned about this, I get really paranoid when there is a fly around my face because of the fact that this could possibly happen to me. Rainbow Valley at Mount Everest is named so because of the colorful coats of dead people. The Blue Mustang statue at the Denver airport, named Blue Cipher by the locals, killed its creator when a piece fell and severed an artery in his leg. If weird ghost stuff is happening, make sure your carbon monoxide detector is working. One of the few things keeping us from better pharmaceutical products is human ethics. The one that still disturbs me is that the sun could randomly eject something that could kill us all. Someone else probably knows the details better than me, but I read about it a while back. Dogs like squeaky toys because it sounds like prey that's frightened or injured. Jason Earls, who played Hannah Montana's brother Jackson, John Cena, Ludacris, and Psy, are all the same age. Also, your bones are wet. There were Holocaust survivors that died shortly after being liberated because their body couldn't handle the increased calories when they were fed by the soldiers that freed them. I was on the USS Ronald Reagan in 2011. I worked on the flight deck. The ship responded for a humanitarian mission to Japan following the terrible tsunami. Upon arrival, we detected high LVLS of radiation and thought we had an issue with the reactor on the ship. The smart PPL on Bodaka, not me, eventually figured out that our ship was in a radioactive cloud released from Fukushima. The command staff immediately ordered all communications to our family's email, phone calls be seized. While on board, we could watch major news networks on the Armed Forces network. No news network was reporting the nuclear issue that our government and the Japanese government knew about. At one point, the command related we were going to do a Noah's Ark type operation by docking in Japan and removing as many US military assets families as possible and evacuate the area. Those orders eventually got cancelled. After several days, the captain gave us a chance to contact our families. Within hours, it was leaked to all the major news networks what was actually going on, and that US Navy ships were contaminated. Once again, communication was cut off. We were forced to sign forms that stated we received iodine prior to exposure, which was false. After about 80 days at sea, no country would let us dock due to contamination. News crews were flown on board. We covered the flight deck in foam and pushed brooms. You can see the pictures on Google. The headline was "Us ships decontaminated." Propaganda so other countries would accept us to replenish. The VA will still not acknowledge this as radiation exposure to my knowledge. Imagine trying to trust the news after this experience. In explosions, it's not always flying shrapnel. It's not the fire that kills you. No, it's the pressure wave that liquefies your insides. Told to me by a buddy who was a US Army sniper. When shot by a 5.56mm round from a rifle, the bullet tumbles entering the body. The entry wound would be but a small hole, but the internal damage is near catastrophic. That the Chernobyl disaster, everything that happened and all of the devastation, was the result of only 5% of the nuclear material in the reactor being explosively ejected. Just 5%. The remaining 95% of the nuclear material still sits in the ruins of reactor 4, a volatile mixture of melted fuel, damaged concrete, graphite rods, zirconium cladding, sand, dust and who knows what else. The entire ruin is emitting lethal amounts of radiation, making cleaning it up next to impossible. Up until the new safe confinement went up in 2017. The only thing that could be done was to seal the open-air reactor off with a hastily constructed shield of metal. This structure lasted for over 30 years, and as it aged the risk of it collapsing due to decay was very real. If it had crumbled as it almost did in 2013, the result would have been an apocalyptic release of radioactive dust across a far larger area of Europe than the incident in 1986. There will be a last person, a last living organism, to see the end of all the life in the universe. The rest of time will never be experienced, and will just happen. People's conscious decisions are usually nothing of the sort. They're usually made subconsciously. Then, all the conscious mind normally does is build narratives about the previously made decisions. Those narratives consciously seem to arise concurrently with the decisions, but really they rise only afterward. Research on split brain patients has proven all of this. Simply put, your brain makes choices without you knowing, then tricks you into thinking the choices were yours, by allowing you to invent gratifying reasons why you supposedly chose them. Climate change. It's a bit hard to grasp without context, and context is key because no one can understand, respect, or appreciate anything without context. The Earth is about 4.6 billion years old. Arguing about climate change is difficult since 4.6 billion seems like a very long time and we as humans have been alive for such a short time. Why do I care? I won't be alive to deal with it. So, let's add context and say that the planet is 46 years old. That means that humans have been around for about 4 hours. 4 hours ago I was making dinner. 1 minute ago the Industrial Revolution began. The mid to late 1800s and I began typing this. In that time we have destroyed, removed, burned, chopped down, over 50% of the world's forests. This is not sustainable for anyone's generation. To understand problems you must have context. My mother saw no end of disturbing things when she was a nurse, circa late 1950s 1960s. She worked on psych wards where people got disturbing treatments, lobotomies, sleep therapy, etc. She also worked on a pediatrics ward in an area where there was pretty wild poverty and the kids were in rough shape. Awful era and living conditions way back when. Cats know when they are going to die. They go and find a small secluded place and pass away. That the Fermi paradox exists. We could be the only high intelligent beings in the universe, the only planet that has life, or we are currently way behind other civilizations that are centuries or even millennia ahead of us in technology and we don't know if they are friendly, not to mention everything in between, and that being civilizations that are equal with us somewhat or an alien bacterium or virus that is impossible to cure or stop with our current tech and understanding. Though unlikely, it is entirely possible that the universe has already collapsed and the end of reality as we know it is propagating towards us at the speed of light. We'll never get any warning that it's coming and it could hit us at any time, annihilating the entire planet in less than a tenth of a second. There are more slaves now than before the Civil War. The way you were raised will influence the way you will raise somebody else. YouTubers who find animals in distress with the camera running usually put animals in distress to look like heroes. With the permafrost and tundra thawing out, bacteria and other microorganisms that we know nothing about are becoming active again. From 1928 to 1972, my province would sterilize people who they found to be mentally handicapped. They figured this was the ideal way to stop the spread of mental disease. Terminal lucidity is the return of mental clarity or memory or consciousness shortly before death. This happens to around 10% of people with dementia. Multiple genetic diseases, and this is extremely oversimplified so I don't give people nightmares. Glass bones, brittle bone disease, sneezing can break a bone, or bumping a counter. Basically the body can't grow strong bones at all. CPS has been called on many a parent for this disease before diagnosis. Holoquin Syndrome, very cracked and broken skin due to what doctors believe is the body being unable to shed old skin easily. Tremend Syndrome, body overreacts to injury and instead of a bruise or sore muscle, will turn the injured area into bone. After a certain point, people with this have to decide what position to be frozen in for the rest of their existence. Tremend Syndrome, condition where the HPV to grow uncontrollably to the point that the skin starts looking like tree bark. Butterfly skin, you know how delicate a butterfly's wings are and how easily they can lose their wing scales? That's the skin of someone who has this. It just comes off at the slightest touch, leaving many patients to look like walking mummies and needing to be under insane amounts of sun protection. Vampire disease. Basically, if someone goes out in sunlight without enough protection, their skin reacts horribly, worse than a sunburn by at least 20x. Our lips and anus are made of the same skin type of material. IDK how to say without it being weird. The guy that started the vaccines cause autism scare in the late 90s condoned and conducted child abuse as part of his fraudulent study, all in the pursuit of fabricating evidence to support his own business ventures and a class action lawsuit against MMR vaccine manufacturers. I used to be involved in the My Little Pony fandom. I would highly recommend never letting your kids get anywhere near it. Part of the reason I left was due to the overabundance of potential pedos lurking within. If you go on their main art website and turn off all the filters, then sort by most upvoted, the kid ponies, not the main 6 ponies you usually see, are all over up there as the most popular characters. There are hundreds of fanfics about them too, all in super lewd situations, usually with the fandom self-insert character babysitting, which always led to sex. Anon is you in these stories. They are literally second-person stories about you sleeping with Sweetie Belle or Apple Bloom. Grad as good as essentially. What made me jump ship from the fandom as a whole was finding out there were Discord servers with hundreds of members all into this stuff, actively sharing it and talking about actual real life pedo things. Looking back, I should have known it was an issue just from how popular faux art was. I think I just hoped people were considering them aged up as a sort of not my fandom thing, but it really is a huge chunk. One day, you'll be thought about for the last time, and everyone will forget you. That's my biggest fear, that everyone will forget me and every trace of my existence will be gone forever. There was a very last time both your mom and your dad held you on their laps or carried you on their arms before they never did it again. Purebred dogs are basically just walking Frankensteins. They were created by rich Victorians in the 1800s for aspects such as speed and strength. However, this circle of a bloodline recession made it worse for the animals. It explains why many modern animals have very wrinkly faces and many golden retrievers don't live past the age of 12 due to cancer. I did a project on this a while back and it's really interesting to read about. Also, the reason we don't have a lot of mummies is because rich people also ate them in the Victorian era. To make it short, purebred dogs are the equal of the Charles II of Spain, and mummies were the snack that smiles back in the 1800s. The Matthews and the Hart bridges in Jacksonville are about to fail. The pilings in the river do not touch bottom. I'm a commercial diver and I refuse to drive on these bridges. Russia sank a number of nuclear submarines, with the reactors intact, in shallow water. Once the submarine rusts enough, high-level nuclear waste will start contaminating fairly crowded shipping lanes. One of the submarines they sunk used a liquid metal-cooled fast reactor. When water finally rusts its way into that reactor, instead of the reactor rusting, it may explode. Murder at the hands of an intimate partner is the leading cause of death for women who are pregnant or in their first postpartum year. This has been shown true by a number of studies in US states, but is likely also true elsewhere. Baby sharks are born in eggs their mother houses inside of her body. The first baby born eats the rest. That the negative ion stuff is usually laced with thorium, which is a highly radioactive material found on the periodic table of elements near uranium, and there was a massager pen that had pure thorium oxide powder in it and the back cap was loosely put on and you could pull it out with just a pair of channel lock pliers. The water you drink has been recycled approx 7 times. That means it has been through 7 people's bodies before you put it in your mouth.